watching. This year, streamed live online only. Right now, people in more than 20 countries are watching us. Like, for example, the United States, Germany, France, Argentina, Costa Rica, India, among so many others. Thank you very much for watching us. Here with me at the Fundecitrus office in Araraquara, São Paulo, are Fundecitrus General Manager Juliano Aires. Good morning, Juliano. Good morning. Political, institutional, and methodological coordinator linked to Marcus Strat and professor at USP and FGV, Marcos Fava Neves. Good morning, professor. Good morning, everyone in the citrus community. Also with us, the executive coordinator, also linked to Marcus Strat, Vinicius Gustavo Trombin. Good morning. Good morning, Renata. Also here with us, professor at Unesp and coordinator in statistics, José Carlos Barbosa. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Also present in this auditorium are PES Supervisor Fernando Delgado and PES Specialist Roseli Reina. Fundecitrus President Dr. Lorival Carmo Mônaco is also participating with us remotely. Should you have any questions, please forward them by WhatsApp at the number 5516 99629 2471. Please say your name and the city or country you're watching us from. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentations. The 2020-2021 orange crop forecast and tree inventory for the São Paulo and West Southwest Minas Gerais citrus belt have been developed by Fundecitrus Orange Crop Estimate Survey since 2015 in cooperation with Marcus Strat, Unesp Jabuticabal, and USP FEA Ribeirão Preto. PES data provides an overview of the main orange growing region in the world, therefore contributing with planning for the sector so that citriculture continues to be one of the main crops, not only from the economic and social points of view by creating jobs and income, but also environmentally, as we will discuss later. Our online streaming will be divided into 4 steps, namely, first, crop announcement, then institutional video on PES and Brazilian citriculture. Following that, we are going to have the presentation of the main data on the crop estimate and tree inventory. And finally, Q&A session. Questions might be forwarded by WhatsApp at the number on your screen. And inventory data on tree inventory and other data in general was restricted to Fundecitrus President, Fundecitrus General Manager, the Technical Supervisor, PES Specialist, and to survey partners at Marcus Strat, Unesp Jabuticabal, and FEA Ribeirão Preto. All of them were subject to confidentiality obligations with regard to PES information before its announcement was made public, according to agreements signed between each of them and Fundecitrus. Crop forecast figures were finalized this morning before this broadcast. Right now, we would like to invite the president of Fundecitrus, Lorival Carmo Mônaco, to announce the orange crop forecast for the 2020-2021 Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for us at Fundecitrus and Marcus Strat, and on behalf of citrus growers, are now in the 6th statistic crop survey of the production that has shown to be an extremely important instrument in terms of reliability on this business. It is something that is so significant because right now, with the knowledge by citrus growers and all members of the productive chain, we can then establish the best business to keep profitability and quality of life for the sector. Right now, we are worried with the difficulties that came up, but all of them have been overcome in a fast fashion by organization and quality of citrus growers that adapt to the necessary changes. We'd like to now talk on behalf of Fundes Citrus about the concern and the strategic orientation of the whole productive chain about the, let's say, sustainability, because it's vital that we go through this reality of the win-win for all segments. We'd like to draw your attention also to the fact that due to the survey, citriculture in Brazil, especially in Sao Paulo and Minas, it goes through a new situation where the number of plants or the number of hectares that we have with the orange has kept also a legal reserve of more than 30%. That's really important. In addition, something that is vital as well is the behavior in terms of this period of crisis we are going through because of the pandemics, when we are able to find a response in terms of consumption of orange juice, showing that more than a commodity, orange juice is a product of quality that should be expanded as much as possible. The numbers we have today are extremely significant. Today we have 364,000 hectares of orange, where we grow 174 million orange trees. That allows us a better yield per hectare. However, the crop this year, as compared to last year's, is 287.76 million boxes. That shows that we are able to serve the market with a product of quality that is increasingly better. And something to highlight at this time is we are going to start the crop. It's going to be a harvest period that is going to extend until next year. So we are going to go through all the steps foreseen in this crisis of the pandemic. And because of the organization in the productive chain, we have quality of life and safety of workers as the most important things. Right now, I'd like to thank especially citrus growers that have helped us with their precision. We'd like also to thank technical team that have helped us in this period of difficulties so that we could define with clarity and transparency the quality of estimates that we are carrying out. We are following a definite schedule, and we are committed to transparency. So thank you very much to all of you, and now we're going to proceed to a detailed presentation for every item, and we expect you to make the most of this meeting. We'll now give the floor back to Renata. Thank you very much, Dr. Monaco, and thank you, all of you watching us here and abroad. More than 20 countries watching us. As I said before, many people interested in this announcement of the 2020-2021 crop announcement. So from now on, you can forward the questions you may have, and questions will be addressed towards the end of our presentation. Please use the WhatsApp number on your screen for forwarding questions. Now, I would like to have those here in front of this auditorium to please take a seat.
Olá, bom dia. Vão chegando, vão entrando. Sejam bem-vindos.
Coisa linda, hein, seu Finoto?
Vão sentando, fiquem à vontade.
Obrigada. Você estava contando pra gente, né, Sr. Finoto, que tudo começou em 1970, né? Como é que foi, então, esse início, essa relação do senhor com a citricultura?
A gente começou na família, eram meus pais, meus tios, todos juntos, e a gente começou a plantar. A gente trabalhava com outras áreas que era grãos, era algodão, era milho, era arroz, que se plantava aqui. E depois foi interagindo na laranja. Então hoje o nosso ideal é só laranja.
E como é que o senhor ajudava? Do que o senhor lembra dessa época?
Era tudo mais difícil do que hoje, porque naquela época tudo se tornava difícil. Você não tinha os implementos, os maquinários que você tem hoje, não tinha a possibilidade. Você plantava-se uma muda, você tinha que aguar, você tinha que pegar águas em córrego para aguar a muda. Era tudo mais difícil. É uma coisa que a hora que você cresce, desde pequeno, você sente aquilo no coração da gente mesmo, porque você vê tudo um trabalho seu que você fez e vem vindo e vem dando certo. Isso é gratificante para a gente. Hoje eu já vou fazer praticamente esse mês 62 anos. De 12 anos a 62 anos eu tenho 50 anos dentro disso, você entendeu? Então a hora que você conta a tua história, que você volta nas tuas raízes, é emocionante isso.
O que a citricultura trouxe para o senhor? Para a família do senhor? Graças a toda essa cultura, toda essa produção, o que o senhor conseguiu ao longo da vida?
A gente vive dentro da tranquilidade. E eu tenho 3 filhas, formei as 3 filhas, dei faculdade para elas, coisa que eu não tive. Então acho que hoje eu me sinto realizado.
Qual que é o segredo?
O segredo é um só, isso eu falo para qualquer um. É você chegar na planta e conversar com ela. Me dá o que eu preciso, que eu te dou o que você precisa.
The orange juice consumed in the world, greatly enjoyed at breakfast and so important for our immune system, comes from groves like this, owned by Luis Carlos. Groves owned by people whose families have depended on citriculture for decades. Fund a Citrus Crop Estimate survey, using data gathered from citrus growers, juice companies, and the government, has improved its methodology with every year to reliably reflect the figures presented and what actually takes place in the field. This year, incidentally, the environmental aspect of growing citrus is included, showing that the area of conserved native woods is impressive. More than 180,000 hectares covered by original forests within citrus farms. By making information available on crop size and features of the citrus belt in a democratic and simultaneous way to all the productive chain, the Crop Estimate Survey and the tree inventory provide confidence to the sector. Confidence, in turn, encourages new enterprises, favors lasting connections, and helps overcome challenges.
O senhor conhece a pesquisa de estimativa de safra do Fundecito?
Eu conheço.
Ajuda?
Ajuda.
De que
muito.
forma?
Para a gente ter um planejamento, para a gente saber o que está se produzindo, o que está dentro da área que a gente trabalha. Então acho que você tem que saber tudo o que está acontecendo dentro desse ciclo para você interagir dentro disso.
Planejamento.
Hoje, você tem que pensar o hoje. A gente não sabe o futuro, mas você tem que se planejar para chegar lá no futuro e a coisa dar certo. Porque na realidade é uma coisa só. Dificilmente você acertar tudo, mas tem que errar o mínimo. É aonde que você chega num ponto que você tem que conseguir errar o mínimo que você puder. E se não tem esse levantamento sozinho dentro da tua propriedade, você não consegue.
The confidence that comes from knowledge is the right partner for citrus growers, so that harvest is plenty, not only of oranges, but also of economic, social, and environmental benefits brought by citriculture. With jobs created in all strata of society, collection of taxes, opportunities for development and prosperity, as well as respect for the environment.
Quando o senhor pensa em citricultura, em uma frase, qual que é o sentimento que vem para o senhor?
O citricultor que é citricultor hoje, ele não tem sangue correndo na veia, ele tem isso aqui, ó, suco de laranja, senão ele não é citricultor. A verdade é essa.
Thank you, Mr. Luis Carlos Finotto, for sharing a little bit of your story with us. So beautiful story. And for having told us not only about your work, but also about your passion for citriculture that was made real clear to us. I can see that through your smile and your shining eyes. Your trajectory of overcome challenges and achievements met through citriculture mirrors the trajectory of so many thousand other small and mid-sized citrus growers in our citrus belt. Now, I'd like to invite Fundecitrus General Manager Juliano Aires to present the details of the crop forecast and tree inventory for the citrus planted area for the 2020-2021 crop season. Good morning.
Bom dia a todos, queridos citricultores.
Good morning, my dear citrus growers, professionals in this wonderful citrus growing chain. I have the privilege of showing this crop forecast for 2020-2021 season.
Uma grande equipe envolvida nesse processo todo.
And there is a large group of people involved in this work. As our president pointed out, Dr. Carmo Monaco, he mentioned the crop estimate for this season that is 287.76 million boxes. That is 25% or so lower than last year's and 12.5% as compared to the average for the last 12 or 10 crops.
Em função das condições,
and that is due especially to climatic conditions that were adverse and atypical this past year.
Para a gente tentar entender pouco
for us to try and understand why such a significant crop loss of 25%, we have to go back in time. What happened last year in June and July, that is our winter, it was an extremely dry year. But the drought was shorter, so orange tree had the highest yield in history, a lot of fruit in the tree. Under such conditions, when rainfall picked up in July and August, then there was a lower flower induction because of there being a lot of fruit in the tree and a lower stress. And then after flowering, in the following month, or 2 months, September and October, we had very high temperatures. 35, 38, 40 degrees Celsius in some regions. Out of the 12 regions, 11 of them had adverse climate at a certain point. And also we had Indian summer that lasted 2 weeks. With that, with this high temperature situation, there was a high drop of first bloom fruit. both those from irrigated areas, representing 30%, and other 70% of non-irrigated areas. So the first bloom was strongly affected. We had a lower number of fruit, lower than usually happens in the first bloom, that is prevailing usually. In November, late November, rainfall picked up, and then with that there was a compensatory effect, that is a second bloom that was heavy, intense. And then those varieties that did not have flowered well, especially Pera and other early other late, had the third and fourth blooms with good setting, but not just exactly like the first one is usually. But then in March and April, summer months, after intense rains in November to February, we again went back to water restriction, that is scarce rains. And with that, well, that happened in the key moment of development of fruit. And then fruit were smaller than usual. So we can see in May, for instance, this is a picture of of the month of May. You see the fruit is still small, below historical average. Here, for us to have a detailed view of the 12 regions, you can see that July and June were dry. August, September had rainfall with the flower induction, and then there was water restriction from October on. And then March and April, with data here, they explain the low setting of fruit and the low size of fruit. Once again, a picture dated August 2019. Good flowering, but not as intense. So less stress and a lot of fruit on the tree. Our citriculture depends on the climate more than the citriculture in the Mediterranean area or Florida, because 70% of our groves are non-irrigated. So rains and temperatures post-bloom are what determine the following crop. So citrus growers will always look up in the sky and see what the probability of rain is in good climate in general, because there's a strong correlation of the climate to the next year's crop. This graph for the last years shows a certain biannuality of the crop. This year, 287 million boxes. Last year, 387 million. That is 100 million boxes less. And last year was a very important production. Although we have greening and all that, citriculture has increased its efficiency and competitiveness. Even at a lower crop, we have yield of 800 boxes per hectare. That is a good yield. Good. So let's now show details for each of the steps. From January to April, we had the counting of trees, tree inventory by sampling, tree stripping also by sampling. And then next, we'll have the determination of the size of the fruit. And also, as of August, we are going to map groves again for oranges, tangerines, and lime and lemons. So we're going to have more precision in the next survey. The complete mapping is made every 3 years. So how do we proceed in our crop estimate? We have 4 basic assumptions. First, the number of bearing trees, trees above 3 years of age. Then, the average number of fruit per tree in all varieties in the strata. And then we have the fruit drop rate. And then we have the fruit per box, fruit size, that is very important. So we have to have those 4 assumptions for us to have a precise forecast as a result. So first and second, we have here bearing trees and fruit per tree, we have for sure. And then the fruit drop And fruit size is something we measure every year, all the time. So varieties represent, oranges represent 97% of trees. You have here the early season oranges, those 6 varieties, and then the mid-season, most important one is Beira Rio, and then we have the late season, that is Valencia, Folha Murcha, and Natal. And also other oranges like acidless oranges, sweet oranges, and others that we do not account for in our estimate. And for our citrus planted area, here the state of Sao Paulo and also southwest Minas Gerais, we have here in the state, in this area here, 12 regions. Hotter climate, intermediate climate, and here to the southwest, we have more moderate weather where rainfall is better. North and northwest has more irrigation, and southwest with a better climate we do not have a lot of irrigation. So we sampled trees for counting of 5% of plots. So what you're going to see is figures that come from sampling, but it has a high precision because it's corrected every 3 years. So here we have 2,557 plots where all plants were counted in different strata in terms of age, and this work has been carried out for every plot in this 5% of the area as a sample. It's a very rigorous and serious work we carry out. Now, in terms of ages, we have here 6 strata. 0, that is 1 to 2 years, non-berry. 1, 3 to 5 years, also basically newly planted growths. And then number 2, 6 to 10 years of age. Sometimes resets here also because of greening. We have eradicated trees. And then we have the category 3, that is trees above 10 years of age, with also some resets. With all that, we come to a snapshot of groves in different areas or at different ages. And that's very important because we have a different yield and production for original trees and resets. That's important too. In terms of orange trees, we have a little growth in terms of, in comparison to last year's, 1.26%, especially due to the new growths. That is planting in 2019 and 2018. And then we kept the number of bearing trees that didn't fluctuate very what we had was more growths that are newly planted. We'll talk about areas in a while as well. So the area has not changed very much, as we'll comment later about.
Vai dar pau aqui. Desculpe que problema aí com a transmissão.
There were some technical problems in the projection. So in terms of orange groves, we have here 395,000 trees in the 2019 inventory. And you see that the planted area in 2019 was 13,359. And so if you take into consideration the bearing tree areas, but it was abandoned in 2020, it's the 3,000, and then we have the eradicated area as well. Here, in more details, 13,359 hectares correspond to expansion areas, and the other 13 hectares are
que mais ou
either
menos tem um efeito
eradicated or
compensatório
abandoned
em cima
areas,
da-
they have a
Quando se
compensatory
observa entre os
effect.
cinco
When we
diferentes
see the
setores,
five
das 12
different
regiões, são
sectors
divididos em 5 setores, vocês observam que a
of
região
those
norte
12 regions, we
e
see
a
that the
região
north
sudoeste
and
são a-
southwest
tem um leve
regions
crescimento
have a
de cerca de
slight
1%,
growth
as demais
of
áreas
1%,
o
and the
pequeno
other
decresce.
areas a little bit
A
of
citricultura,
decrease.
ela-
So
ela, de
citriculture
certa forma, se equilibra
somehow
entre as regiões
is
e
balanced
se
throughout
mantém mais ou
regions
menos estável
and is
desse-
kept
de um ano
more or
pro outro.
less stable from one year
Que
to the
mostra
next.
detalhe, uma
Here we have
tendência
more
dos últimos
details,
3 anos,
and this is a
onde a
trend
citricultura vive
for the
bom
last
momento,
3 years. It's a good
o
moment
número de
in,
hectares
for citriculture. The
jovens
number of
tem
hectares
crescido,
here
principalmente nos últimos 2
has
anos.
increased, especially for the
Plantas
last 2
abaixo de
years.
3 anos não produtivas
Plants that are
são
below
cerca
3 years of
de
age
31.000
and non-berry
hectares, né?
correspond to
São
31.22
13.592 com 17.635, que é o que contabilizaria esse número, né? E com isso a gente teria
thousand
cerca de
hectares.
364
And
hectares
with that,
de pomares
we have
adultos,
364,000 hectares of mature groves.
Por que que não está mesmo se plantando mais
So even if we
laranja,
plant
laranjeiras
orange
nessas áreas,
trees
nós não
in
estamos tendo crescimento
different
em
areas,
termos
why
de,
don't we have growth in
hectares?
terms
Porque
of
hoje os pomares
hectares?
são
Because
plantados em
today
outra
groves
densidade.
are planted in a different density of planting. The current density is above 600 plants, whereas in the past was 400 plants. So even if we have more intense planting, the area has kept relatively the same size, with a little bit of decrease. Here, more details to say that after 2014, when greening started, it was a trend to increase density because of loss of plants, so the density of planting increased, and we are trying to reach a balance point. It seems we went a little bit above the ideal density, so we have tried to find the best density for rootstock and scion combinations. In the last years, there's been a trend to decrease a little bit the density of planting.
Em relação às variedades, aquelas principais
What about
variedades
varieties,
destinadas
the main varieties
para
aimed at
indústria,
fruit
Vocês
processing?
observam que a principal
We
variedade,
see that
a
the
pera,
main
que vinha
variety,
decaindo
pera,
nos últimos
that
anos,
was
até 4, 5
decreasing
anos atrás,
until
ela tem crescido.
4 or 5 years ago,
Uma das
has now
explicações para
grown.
isso,
One of the
ela tem
explanations
dupla
for that
aptidão,
is
ela
that it
tem
has
melhor qualidade,
dual
tanto pro mercado in
purpose.
natura
That is, it
como
can
pra-
be
pro sul,
used
né?
as
Então,
table fruit
46%
and
é
fruit for
expressivo,
processing.
né? Vindo depois a Valência, com
And then
variedade
after that, we
bem
have
produtiva,
Valencia,
e a
that is
Natal em
also
seguida.
high production,
E aí
and
os
then Natal.
precoces,
And then
com
the
importância
earlies
menor,
with
sendo
not
que a
as much and
americana, que são as mais
with
produtivas,
importance that is
foram
not as high.
plantadas. E com isso a gente tem
So here we
percentual
have
da área plantada
the
desses
percentage of
10.860
area planted for
milhões de
all
no
those
último ano,
varieties
lá de 2019.
in the
E a terriço? Esse
10,800
ano, como foi explicado
hectares.
pelo
What about
Dr. Mônaco, nós
tree
tivemos uma
stripping?
condição atípica.
This year, there was an atypical condition. We had the effect of the onset of a COVID-19, something that is all over the world and, of course, brought us concern as well. And still, we carried on with all the protective measures taken with no problem in the field, with the collaboration of all citrus growers. This is March and April, March 12 to April 13, where the tree stripping took place.
Esse ano ela
This is
foi,
a tree stripping
1.590.
laboratory.
Então, houve uma redução de 38% na amostra.
So there was a
mas
decrease
essa
of
amostra, vocês
38%
vão
in the
observar
sample
depois,
size. Now we
ela
have
confere segurança
590
para
trees
estimativa
sampled,
de safra.
but that
Uma amostra
provides
suficiente pra
safety
gente ter uma precisão
to
grande na
our
estimativa de
precision in the crop estimate.
Aqui
The
cada ponto,
size sample is
ou seja,
enough for
nessa-
that. Here,
São Paulo,
each of
do
the
Triângulo
points
Mineiro,
in Sao Paulo and West Southwest Minas Gerais,
do total de 1.590
out of the total
árvores
of
derriçadas,
100 and
1.230 foram plantas
590
original
trees
e
that
360
were stripped,
são replantas, já que nós temos,
1,230 trees were trees from the original planting and 360 were
com isso, nós
resets.
temos uma segurança
With
maior
that, we have even more reliability in the number of fruits per
Outro
plant.
ponto muito importante
Another important
é
point
aonde
is
essa planta é derriçada.
where this
Tem que
plant
ser amostral,
is.
aleatório, não pode ser subjetivo.
how do we choose plants for stripping? A series of studies have been carried out to show that
Se procura da borda do talhão, a 13ª
from
row,
the
e a 20ª
border
planta,
of the
ela
plot,
representa
the 13th
a
row
média
and
do número de
11th
frutos do
tree
participe.
in the row
Então,
will
aqui vocês
represent,
têm,
or
a
the
distribuição
21st tree in the 13th row
num
is the place where the tree is drawn for stripping in a plot.
maior parte das amostras
So
no
most of the
intervalo de
samples
20
are
metros a 70 metros,
within
tá?
20
Que é
to
ponto
70
médio onde o
meters
efeito
away
do
from the
greening é
border,
menor
where the
e
effect
é
of
mais
greening is
representativo
less
em termos
intense, and
de
it's more
frutos por ano.
representative in terms of fruit per tree.
E o que aconteceu em termos de
And what
variação do
happened in
número de
terms of
frutos por ano?
variation in number of
Como
fruits
nós
per
falamos
tree?
no início,
As we said before,
as chuvas
rainfall
e a temperatura, elas
and
foram muito
temperature
variadas
were
dentro dessas
very
12 regiões existentes.
diverse
Vocês
in
podem
the
observar
regions
que das
of the
12
citrus
regiões
area.
existentes,
Out of the
existe uma
12
região,
regions, there's just
região
one
mais ao
of
sul,
them
região de Itapetininga,
towards the
Avaré,
south, that is
existe uma
Itapetininga and
tendência
Avaré, with a
leve
trend
crescimento
of
do
a
número de
slight
frutos.
growth in the
Todas
number
as
of
demais
fruit. For
11
all the
regiões,
other 11
existe
regions, there is a
decréscimo do número de
decrease in the number of fruit.
Onde
Where?
a região de Duartina,
The Duartina,
Matão,
Matão, São José do Rio Preto, Votuporanga, Bebedouro regions, where temperatures are higher,
o efeito
the
climático foi
effect
mais
of the
adverso,
climate was
a
more
redução foi mais
adverse.
dramática.
And there, the reduction was more intense, 27% average, but you see that it varied from region to region.
Então, essa variação do número de
So
frutos, ela
this variation in the number of fruit will
bastante
depend a
das
lot
regiões. Vocês
on
observam que a
regions.
redução de
You see that the
2019
reduction from
2019,
2019-20 to 2020-21 was 27%. That is a significant decrease in the number of fruit. Here, even more details to explain the reason of this high decrease, large decrease in the number of fruit per tree. This is December 2019, and you see that above 35 degrees, and that lasted for several days, that caused unbalance in hormones in the plant, and that added to the Indian summer that lasted 2 weeks, resulted in the significant reduction of number of fruits per tree, and then also caused multiple blooms, as we are going to address later. So this is the physiological drop, the June drop. Plants are wise, so they will try and preserve the tree, and then part of the fruit will be eliminated by this physiological drop. So there is a strong correlation between climate and fruit setting. And 2019 showed that temperatures were high, much higher than that of other years, and that explains the reduced number of fruit from the first bloom. This is a snapshot of the average for all varieties and all regions. Differently from most of other years, first bloom here is not the prevailing one, representing only 32%, almost 33%. Second bloom that took place towards the end of November and December, this year is the most important one, representing more than 50% of the number of fruit in the tree. And then a third bloom in February and a fourth in March, April are represented here, totaling the 100%, but as you can see, first and second bloom represent 85% of the number of fruit. Here, once again, just to confirm what we said before, there's been a high variability between regions. For example, for the West, Minas Gerais, the first bloom is the most important one, 51%. Why? Because this region has 80% of the area under irrigation. So this flower induction affected due to the irrigation. And that's why the first bloom is more important. Whereas in other regions like Brotas, that is, we have, or even Duartina, the first bloom is around 20%.
acima de
and
50.
that the second is above 50, the second bloom. So you see, each region had a specific characteristics due to rainfall and existing temperatures. And third and fourth blooms prevailed for pera and late varieties.
Segunda e terceira florada muito menor.
Early varieties had a much less intense second and third blooms. This is a snapshot, May 9th, in a Pera Rio Grove that is under irrigation. So in the same plant, we have three blooms. The first, that is not the most important one, the second, with more than 50% of importance, and the third one.
Laranjeira, quando ela tem
So you see the orange tree, when it is under stress and loses one bloom, it has a compensatory effect. That happens a lot for Pera and lates and less with early varieties. Again, a snapshot or a picture 2 days ago showing the size of the fruit on May 9th. First, second, and third bloom for Pera Rio. When we compare the size of fruit with historical average, this is below average, although in this specific case, it is irrigated growth that is only representing 20% of the areas of the state. In the non-irrigated area, the size is even smaller.
aqui não percentualmente, e
Here,
sim
not in terms of percentage, but rather number of boxes. So out of those 287 million boxes, 150 million is prevailing, and then 94 is the first bloom. If we had the third
seria ainda muito
and
menor.
four
Quarta florada é uma
blooms and more intense would be an even better crop. The fourth bloom is more for the table fruit production, almost 8 million boxes, but it's more, the fourth bloom is more related to table fruit, but it's then a significant lower crop or production. So what about the final size of fruit or fruit per box? We have a survey in terms of greening and citrus variegated chlorosis and canker. We survey all that, and also under the influence of the climate together with pests and disease, then we have all the information on number of trees, fruit size, and fruit drop. So as for fruit size here, we have the adjusted square R of 91%. What's important in there, in this calculation? Well, first, the fruit per tree at stripping, and then also the fruit weight at stripping. That is, fruit has been through significant development at this stage, and if it's a smaller fruit, it has to have, of course, lower weight. And it's vital in the studies that we carry out for the last in the last years. That is the fruit of the work of Fundecitrus together with Marques Trapp and Unesp. If we take into consideration here the accumulated rainfall from May to July, well, rainfall, we are considering this rainfall to be average to lower the historical average. We see that besides this trend from May to July, the other months before were drier. So what's the representativeness of the first and second blooms together? So here we show for one of the regions in Southwest area with the better distribution of rain in the state of São Paulo. This is also a picture taken last week for early varieties like Ruby and Valencia Americana. You see the leaves are wilted and you have prevailing second bloom. Earlies were the varieties that had the most crop loss in terms of yield. And then here, Pera in April or May with a very reduced size. So it's a year where fruit tend to be smaller, and that explains the final weight of the fruit. When we see and compare this average weight for 2020-2021, there's been a trend of you're having fewer fruit with larger size, but that would depend on the rainfall. You see that here, 16, 17, and 15, 16 with more rainfall those years, then the fruit were heavier. And in the other years where rainfall was not as intense, then there was a trend of reduced weight of fruit. And this crop, we have 159 grams of average weight of fruit, which is relatively small because of the smaller number of fruit per tree as well. What about drop rate? That is also vital. We know that's very significant because of the drop. It's important, be it from mechanical damage or other reason. So we based our work on the drop rate because it's a very important factor. In 2016 and 17, we had a lower fruit drop, 13 or 14%. Now, 2017, 2018, we had 17%, and last year we had the highest drop because we had a lot of fruit in the tree, and that was added to pests and disease at the same time. Greening was the most important factor. Its severity has increased in the field, and also fruit fly and fruit borer were also important. So those three pests and disease represent more than 11-12% of the total. And what do we estimate for the next crop? Well, there's a trend of a slight growth of greening. When we have increased greening incidence, then the severity of symptoms also increase. And especially we have dry climate, there's a higher probability of fruit drop and reduced fruit size because of the greening effect. Here we have studies carried out by our researchers at Fundecitrus, coordinated by Renato Bazanesi, showing that after 6 years of contamination, the plant may reduce up to 68% the fruit weight or of the crop size because of the smaller fruit and the intense fruit drop. So this year, because of greening, we're going to have fruit drop a little bit higher than the previous year. This is another important fundamental point. We should also then pay attention to yield per hectare. So how are we doing in terms of that when we see all sectors and varieties? Well, the first question is categories. Number of fruit, average is 568 fruit. And when we see the younger plots, 234. With the mid-age, we have original plants and resets. Average, 462 fruit. Almost the general average, a little bit below. And for mature growths, we have a higher production, so we have an average of 689 fruit with two strata, younger and older growths. That explains the higher production for more mature and productive growths. When we have a snapshot per sector, 5 sectors basically, we can see that south and southwest regions where temperatures are more or are milder and the effect of the climate is not less intense, then we have the higher number of fruit. Whereas in the southwest, that is the milder climate, we have the highest number of fruit above average in a consistent way. The other regions have an intense decrease in the number of fruit, where the north and northwest have the highest drop rate, especially northwest. That is the hottest area in the region. So in terms of yield per sector, in this ranking, the most productive varieties are the early ones, the Hamlin and group, and also the other ones in the same group. We talked about the number of fruit before,
Agora nós
and
estamos
now
falando em
we're talking
produtividade.
about yield
O que se observa
by
aqui
sector.
é
What we
que
see
houve
here is
realmente
that there's
a
been
região sul
in the
e
south
sudoeste,
region and southwest
onde a queda de
region
produtividade foi menor.
the lowest productivity or the lowest yield because of the weather effect. And then northwest, north and central regions had the
Parte da queda de produção nesse ano
very
está
intense
correlacionada à queda
yield
que ocorreu na
drop.
região centro,
And
norte
that
e
has to
noroeste.
do
Os
with
demais
the
foi
crop
uma
loss
queda
in the
menor.
central north and
Isso é uma
northwest.
queda de cerca de
So
24,5% na
here we
rendimento.
have a total 24.5%
Só
decrease.
detalhe, vocês observam que a safra anterior
Another
foi
detail, you see that here we have 1,045
realmente é bastante
boxes per hectare, and
and
now 790 boxes per hectare. But we're still around 800, which is good yield in general. When we analyze the number of fruit per tree by group of varieties, you can see that differently from other years, the number of fruit for earlies is not as high as usually. Hamlin, 620 fruit per tree. Americana and others 565. Pera is always the one with the lower number of fruit per tree, a smaller plant. And then Valencia and Natal, they are in a little bit better situation, and total 568. So earlies with significant drop, Natal and Valencia with not as intense decrease as the other varieties. This is a recent picture to show and to confirm what we said before, that an area of Hamlin that is non-irrigated will have a low number of fruit as compared to the previous year. Valencia Americana also is an early variety with the fruit from first and second bloom, with a low number of fruit that is atypical due to the situation we have this year. And what happened in terms of yield per variety? Well, earlies in general had a loss of almost 40%. Hamlin and Americana, Vestin and Ruby. Pera, 24% reduction. Valencia and Folha Murcha had the less intense drop, 14.6. Natal, a decrease a little bit higher than the other lates, 20, and then the average 24.5% decrease. That's for different varieties in the state of Sao Paulo. So, how do we estimate the crop from now on? Well, we have here bearing trees, 174 billion trees, 568 fruit per tree. That is the average obtained at stripping. Drop rate, although this is a year of fewer fruit in the tree, what was expected, that is, we expected lower drop rate. With greening and a drier year, we are now estimating a high drop rate, 17%. And the fruit per box, 257 fruits per box, due to this year situation of not as intense rainfall, especially March, April, and May. This is the general picture in this table. We have discussed all of this, but just would like to confirm that here we have 1.65 fruit per tree, or boxes rather, per tree. And then we have the total here of 287.76 million boxes. Here, we would like to show that even with this decrease that we mentioned before, this deviation is still relatively low, with all the samples being stripped. 95% are around the average figure. That provides a lot of reliability to the work carried out. So the error that usually was next to 2, today it's this error is below 3. That is very reliable, according to our professor, our specialist in statistics, Professor Barbosa. So an error is 2.65%, Most of samples are close to the average figure, and there's a variation of 15 fruit more plus or minus, and that provides us with significant reliability of this average number of fruit per tree of 568. It's a very precise number. Next step, what we are going to do next. As of May 11th, we have to go to the field and measure as a routine operation the drop rate and the fruit size, and we'll make the corrections that are necessary depending on the climate and other conditions in the next few months. And on September 10th, we are going to have the first crop forecast update. We'll have better data on the situation of the earlies, especially first and second blooms, and also information on part of the Para variety. December 10th, the second update, February 10th, third update, and then April 12th, the following year, we're going to have the final figures. Something else that is very important is that every 3 years we have counting, the new mapping of all citrus farms, plant by plant. We go to the field and we count it. The other years following that have sampling of 5%. So in the last 5 years, or rather, in the last years we had sampling, but now we are going to have new mapping in August, starting in August 2020. And then next year, we're going to have that number of trees in a much more precise way. So this pandemic hopefully is going to be over or better as of August, so that we are able to perform that work better in the field. Differently from other years, we have the privilege of showing you data that really surprised us in a positive way. Every 3.5 hectares where citrus is planted, we have for each 2.5 hectares planted with nectar, with orange, we have 1 hectare of wood reserve. So that's the legal reserve. And it's very rare in the United States, Europe, or other countries for reserve areas to be as significant as the ones we have here. A lot has been said about it, but Sao Paulo is an example set in terms of soil conservation, of keeping our reserves, and that has increased significantly in the last few years. So that's worth mentioning, that our citriculture is not only a benchmark in terms of yield and competitiveness, but it is competitive in terms of juice, but also in terms of sustainability, we are a benchmark. This is the conservation areas distributed on the 12 regions. You see that in some regions, this woods reserve is present. It's present all over in different percentages, and we have a native vegetation and legal reserves, and with that it's possible for us to see in the field a significant growth of birds and mammals, and today it's common for us to see wonderful birds and other animals that are wonderful in the field. They have grown in population because of this raised environmental awareness, not only by those in citriculture, but in agriculture as a whole. Our dream in citriculture is to keep being the most competitive in the world for fruit for processing, but not at any cost, but rather with sustainability, with awareness in terms of the environment, of protecting our workers, of using the water in a right way. And that's our goal, to encourage a more competitive and sustainable citriculture. This is the average yield. You can see that this year there's been a drop, but there is a trend that is continuous because we have the biannuality effect
ano a ano
yield
nas últimas décadas.
has
Mesmo com a
increased
presença
year
de
after year
greening,
in the last
de
decades,
diferentes
even with the
doenças que
greening
são-
and other
atacam fortemente
diseases
pomares.
that intensely attack
Por quê?
or affect our growths. Why is that so? Well, citriculture in the last 20 years has
Todo o
been
parque citrícola praticamente hoje existente
totally
proveniente
remodeled.
do viveiro
We
protegido,
have
com
protected
genética
nurseries to
sanitária.
provide us
O
with
preparo
the
do
nursery
solo hoje
plants,
é
and
feito de forma muito mais
tillage
elaborada,
today is
correção
much more
da
careful with the amendments
aplicação de
used for
fósforo,
correcting
profundidade,
acidity,
a
applying
irrigação
phosphorus
saiu de
in
patamares
depth.
de 1 a 2%,
Irrigation
hoje está
has
acima de
moved from 1 to 2%, and today is
Não só a irrigação,
almost
mas a fertilização,
or even more than
traz uma economia
30%,
na
not
água,
only
mas também
irrigation, but also fertigation
diversidade de
because of the
plantio, a
nutrients
escolha das
offered to
variedades
plants.
próprias
And
também
also the
melhorou
choice, the
a
choosing of
produtividade e a
rootstock
qualidade
and
da fruta.
science that
A escolha da região
has
do
improved the
plantio
quality of the
e a
fruit,
estratégia pra
the
cada
choosing
situação
of the region
também
for
faz a
planting,
diferença e
and that also makes a difference. And
que a
also,
referência no mundo no controle de pragas e
disease
doenças,
control.
ele busca
Fonda
cada dia
Citra is a
mais
benchmark
o manejo de
worldwide
pragas e doenças com a
in
visão
the
de
control
sustentabilidade.
of diseases, pests, and
O pesticida ou a estratégia de controle biológico da melhor forma e no momento exato para o controle disso.
in general. So
E
we
finalmente,
have to
eu
go on
gostaria
continuing
de fazer
with those
agradecimento
efforts in all
especial
areas. Finally, I'd like to
Dizer que nós temos grande
say
privilégio de
special
ter na nossa
thanks
instituição Dr. Lorival
to
Mônaco,
Dr. Lorival
que é
Carmo
exemplo
Monaco,
de
that is an
trabalho,
example
integridade,
set in terms
institutor,
of
que ele não
work
só
and
representa
integrity.
o
He is a citrus grower that not only
presidente e
represents
demais conselheiros,
Fonda
mas
Citrus
ele é exemplo
together with
para
our
que os outros
members of the board, but also he is an
exemplo da
example
nossa
set
cultura.
to other citrus growers and to
Nosso
our
muito obrigado a
citriculture as a
todos.
whole. Thank
No
you all
segundo
very
momento,
much.
nós vamos estar à disposição para as
And
perguntas e respostas.
towards the end of the meeting, we're going to be available for addressing the questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, então, Juliano.
Thank you,
E,
Juliano.
claro, eu peço que todos os membros
Now,
aqui
I'd
da
like
mesa retomem
all
aos seus lugares para a gente, então, fazer
those
aquela
participants
parte
of
de
the panel
perguntas
to
e
please
respostas,
come
e as
back to
perguntas que
your
foram enviadas por vocês
seats
ao
at the
longo da
table
nossa apresentação.
here.
E já agradecendo
And
muito
also,
já
I'd like
de
to
antemão
thank
a grande participação e todos parabenizando aqui
all
a
of
nossa
you
apresentação.
watching
Muito
us
obrigada.
live. Thank you very much.
Bom, e eu começo com a questão aqui para o
We'll
professor
now
Barbosa.
proceed to our Q&A session. There's a question to Professor Barbosa from a citrus grower in the city of Sao Paulo. This year, with multiple blooms and different climate conditions, with 38 reduction in the sample size, what's the reliability of the crop estimate? Professor? When Vinicius wanted me to resize the sample this year due to the onset of COVID-19, so I was then asked to make a study to resize the sample because we wouldn't have the means to keep the sample of as before. So we resized the sample so that we would have an error of 3% in the crop estimate. With that, the reduced size was 1,560. Out of them, 1,230
1.590 amostras foi o número que foi
So,
redimensionado.
1,590 samples was the new size.
E 360
1,530 refer to original plantings, and the other ones, 30, refer to resets and other age categories.
Com essa redução de
With this reduction
2.560 para 1.590
of
amostras,
2,560 to 1,560, we had an error of 2.65% in the estimate.
isso mostra que a
That
amostra,
shows
mesmo com essa redução no
that
tamanho da
even with
amostra,
this
ela é
reduction in the
bastante
sample
confiável.
size, it's still very reliable
Produziu a variância,
and
a
could
variabilidade
reproduce the variability
com o erro previsto
and
do
confidence
redimensionamento da
of
amostra.
the data for the
Nós tínhamos
plots
previsto um erro de 3% e o
with an
valor
error of
realizado foi de 2,65%.
2.65%.
Então isso dá para a gente uma
So
bastante segurança
that
na
makes
estimativa da
us
safra.
able to trust to the numbers in the crop estimate.
Um erro de 2,65%.
So
ou seja,
2.65
15
error,
frutos
that is
para menos,
15
número
minus
que dá uma
or
confiança muito
plus or
grande
minus
no
in
resultado da
number of
estimativa.
fruit. That provides us with very reliable
Temos mais questões que chegaram
figures
aqui ao
in the
longo da
crop
nossa
estimate.
transmissão, e
We
essa
have more
foi a
questions.
Juliana,
This one now is for
do estado
to
de São
Juliano
Paulo.
from a citrus
Como é que o
grower in the
setor
state of
está
Sao
se
Paulo.
preparando para
How is the
colheita
sector being
devido à Covid-19?
getting ready to harvest due to the COVID-19? Well, COVID-19 is a challenge not only to Brazil for agriculture and agribusiness in the city of Sao Paulo, but it's worldwide. Citrus growers are well prepared. There's a large concern because, you see, everyone is using, wearing PPEs, masks, and hand sanitizer, using fewer people for hauling the production, and extreme care is being taken. So people that are within the high-risk group are not going to the field, they're staying home, and with all the support from the government and the citrus sector, we will be able to go through this very sensitive time by complying with all the norms in terms of prevention and safety. Another question to Juliano from Anderson Cesar from Itararé, São Paulo. I'd like to know about the new research and development that may come up and change the scenario of the estimate and increase our yield per hectare. Well, work has been carried out not only by Funde Citrus, but also by other research institutions. I think that there's no chain in agribusiness that can have such a large leap of yield as we have in the last 30 years. You see, we used to have 15 ton per hectare. Today is 40, so it's a large growth as a result of all the factors that we mentioned before. You know, the nursery plant, variety, density, nutrition, irrigation, choice of area. But research cannot stop. We have to bring information that is increasingly more precise, always trying to pursue research within a higher and larger concept of sustainability, still keeping our competitiveness, but within all the assumptions in terms of respect to the soil, to the use of water, and to the environment. And gain has been significant in the last years. Still about this topic, there is a question to Vinicius from agronomist in the city of Sao Paulo. How did you carry out the work in terms of the native vegetation conserved within the citrus belt? Well, first we had we used the data from the environmental rural registry. We use data that is from that registry and that is supplied by IBAMA. They are made available by IBAMA. So we use those geo-reference data and we cross-checked that with the data from citrus farms. And then we could identify by cross-checking the information from those two sources to come up with the estimate in terms of a number of hectares of protected or conserved vegetation areas integrated within citrus farms. And that is part of the work of Embrapa Territorial. Results that we got because of this being a perennial crop, that is a tree that
durante longo
will
período,
remain in the
durante 20
field
anos,
for
pelo
what,
menos,
20 years at
essas
least.
árvores, elas ficam
Trees are going to be there
plantadas, o
planted,
que,
so
proporciona menor
that,
revolvimento do solo, né, possibilitando,
causes
então,
less
a
tillage
instalação
of the
de uma
soil
fauna
and
muito
movement
rica
of the
dentro
soil,
dessas propriedades que
and
tem
that
também de citros que
conserves
também
the soil as well.
a sua área de vegetação protegida.
And therefore we
Agora,
have
para fechar aqui mais uma
those
questão para o professor Marcos Fava Neves, de
efforts
citricultor do estado de
towards
São Paulo.
conserving the
Com a questão
native
da
vegetation.
Covid-19,
So
safra
another
menor,
question,
como
in
ficará
terms
o
of the
mercado? E essa
COVID-19,
estimativa,
with
é
a
possível dizer
smaller
quanto vai para o
crop,
mercado,
what's going to happen in the
quanto vai para a
market?
indústria?
Can we say what percentage of fruit will go to be consumed as table fruit and what percentage of fruit will go to processing? Thank you for your question. Last year we are here and we announced a very large crop. Well, this year we have a smaller crop, 12% lower than the average of the last year. So it's only natural for you to expect some change in price as well. For you to have an estimate today in the world, and here it's almost surreal. If you were in December, last December, we could say, listen, next year something will come up that will lock us in for 2 months. And then oil is going to be negative in price. And our currency real is going to be, $1 is going to cost 6 reais. They're going to call you lunatic, right? No one would believe you. So it's hard to estimate what's going to happen in 1 year's time. So as Juliano mentioned, and in the finalizing the figures here today, I'd like to leave a question here to all of you. Pose a question. Well, what's going to happen to prices then? Well, in the domestic market, if you have the positive and negative sides, and the positive sides we have fewer fruits, and consumption, especially of orange juice, that has increased significantly in terms of boosting immunity, and we have the exchange rate that is playing favorably in this scenario. Also, we have to see that the consumption of orange at restaurants and that have closed down gets in the way as a negative factor. We do not know what's going to happen with income of people after this pandemic. The sanitary crisis is here, but the economic and financial crisis, we do not know much of yet. In the foreign market, we have also a higher consumption. Technical problems with the microphone for the speaker. So in the foreign market, a higher consumption is seen in the United States, which is pleasantly surprising. And also in Europe, the consumption is a little higher, even offsetting the drop or the decrease of consumption at restaurants. So the consumption at home has increased. Inventories are not really high. Real exchange, the currency exchange is also affected. So let's see the behavior of the product in the foreign market as a result. So negatively, we have a decrease in the sector of services. We do not know how this is going to affect the economy in the United States and Europe. There's going to be a lot of unemployment and other things related to that. And also, there is a limit for the consumption of orange juice to go up, right? You cannot, and the price, you cannot come to 3,000 in terms of price. Because you see, there's the whole situation of the portfolio of companies, but it's good news. It's a smaller crop, but probably with a higher profitability. Perfect. Another question that will serve as a complement to what you said, Edivaldo Panini from Bauru, São Paulo, talks about the price of the box, if it tends to increase due to this 2020-2021 crop. So let's just, I think you already answered that. So let's have the final remarks from all of you, starting with Professor Marcos Fava Neves. Well, I have some points here that I'd like to address. I'd like to use 2 or 3 minutes to emphasize the beauty of citriculture in Sao Paulo and Southwest Minas Gerais that were made evident by this crop survey. So figures have been summed up by Juliano. Before my final remarks, I would like to congratulate and acknowledge the work of the whole PASS team that faced additional risks today. They ran risks this year to carry out the survey. I think I'm speaking on behalf of the whole productive chain, right? Because they faced riskier situations so that we could have this survey carried out. Today, we see much more maturity in the productive chain. We see more trust in terms of this number that we have as a result. So the whole chain is to be congratulated. So Fundecitrus today is a worldwide model in terms of how to carry out crop forecast for orange. So the beautiful figures that we have today for the orange chain today, and now in Sao Paulo and Minas Gerais, and also Paraná, well, figures, look, we have $2 billion brought per year to Brazil using 400,000 hectares. So I was doing the math here. For each hectare of orange, we have $5,000 per year brought to Brazil. I'm not sure if there's any other, I don't know of any other farming activity with such a high number. We talk about value added and all that, but you see, $5,000 per hectare? 2 billion reais in this crop that just finished were paid in terms of labor for harvesting. That's an impressive number. 3.64 billion reais are invested yearly in maintaining groves. See how interesting. See how many people make money by doing that? You see, that is being paid to a large group of companies that will benefit from that. 272 million reais are invested in planting. So those are many indexes. They're very beautiful, and they are delivered by citriculture to our country. And this last figure, out of 2.5 hectares used for citriculture, 1 hectare is for conserved vegetation. 180,000 hectares of preserved or conserved vegetation. So this is a time of more change to the orange juice sector. And this is one of the few positive points that this pandemic had as a result. Without any advertising, when we have started to have to face this virus, then the society thought about this product that is very nutritious and then will boost immunity, and then with no advertising, the orange juice has been increased in consumption. That causes stability. If we can keep that stability with profitability, I think that should be the strategy from now on in our future of citriculture. As Juliano said, let's work with our production costs, try and keep competitive, and every year we have $2 billion added to Brazil, and then we can distribute income, as I said, from those harvesting orange until those selling cards or hotels. Everyone is going to profit out of those $2 billion. So Juliano, Dr. Monaco, it's a privilege to be here working with you. It's a pity that you're not here with us, but you're connected to us remotely. And I'd like to make special thanks to Fundecitrus, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of citriculture in Brazil, for delivering so much by using so few resources here in Brazil. Now, please, Juliano Aires, your final remarks.
Eu gostaria de dizer
I'd like to
que
say
esse é
that
momento
this is
único
a
da nossa citricultura,
singular time in our
enfrentar esse
citriculture,
coronavírus e Covid,
facing
se manter
COVID,
em pé,
coronavirus,
tarefa
and
fácil.
still stand
Eu
up
gostaria
is
de,
not easy
primeiro,
task.
fazer um
First, I'd like to make
agradecimento
special
enfático
thanks
a
with
toda a equipe do
emphasis to
Fundecitrus,
all from the
que
Citrus
realmente
team.
é um orgulho para nós.
I'm proud of
Vinícius e toda
the
a
whole team,
equipe, Dr.
Vinicius,
Mônaco,
Dr.
todos os
Monaco,
conselheiros,
and all members,
E realmente isso serve de inspiração.
because you serve
pra gente,
as
né?
an inspiration
Segundo
to
ponto,
us.
o
Second,
Fundecitrus tem o
Fundecitrus
PES, que é um dos
has
pilares,
PES,
mas
that
não
is
é
the
só o
crop
PES.
estimate
Nós somos uma referência no mundo
work,
em pesquisa,
as
em educação,
very important
em
work, but it's not
transferência de
only that. We
tecnologia,
are
e a
a
instituição
role
e
model for the
seus
world in
parceiros
terms of research,
estão preparadas
technology
para esse
transfer,
segundo momento,
and
de que nós
we are
temos que
ready
manter a
for the
competitividade
second phase now, where we
uma
have to
visão
keep
mais
competitiveness with a more
não só do
sustainable
ponto de vista ambiental,
view, not only
mas do ponto de
environmentally
vista
speaking,
social,
but also
e
socially
nós temos uma
speaking.
preocupação muito
And we have
grande
this
do pequeno e médio citricultor.
concern
O
that is
exemplo
very
do seu Finoto no filme, um exemplo de
significant
muitas
with the
gerações
citrus growers,
que
like the example
vivem da
given by
citricultura,
Mr.
não só
Finotto
o
and
citricultor, mas
others
os
that,
trabalhadores,
you know,
é a cadeia que mais gera emprego por
they
hectare.
make their living
Fundecitrus
out of
irá
citriculture.
perseguir
We
isso de
generate a lot
forma
of jobs.
incessante.
We create a lot
Nós
of jobs in
temos um
citriculture,
otimismo,
and we are very
nós acreditamos que essa
optimistic, and we
citricultura, ela vai
believe that
continuar
citriculture
vencendo
will
seus
go
grandes
on
desafios,
overcoming
não só
major challenges, not
sanitários,
only in
mas
terms
também
of health,
de
but also
coronavírus e
in
outros
terms
problemas mais
of
que
coronavirus
vêm pela
and
frente.
other problems that may
Então,
arise in the
meu
future.
Agradecimento
So,
também a
thank you
todos
very
a
much
equipe aqui, o Marcos, o professor Barbosa,
to all members of this
Vinícius,
team, Marcos,
e que
Professor Barbosa,
no ano que vem a
Vinicius,
gente esteja aí
and
livre desse coronavírus.
may we be free of this coronavirus
forte
next year,
e
coming
do ponto
out
de vista
even
de
stronger
saúde
from the
e
point of view of
espiritual.
health and spirituality.
Juliano.
Thank you,
Considerações
Juliano.
finais agora do Vinícius.
Vinicius, your final remarks?
Gostaria então de deixar aqui os
I'd
nossos
like
agradecimentos
to
a toda a equipe do
acknowledge
PES,
the work of
né,
the whole
a equipe de campo,
PASS team,
e
those
análise,
working in the
dados,
field, those
trabalhou com,
analyzing data.
extremamente muita coragem para
You were really
enfrentar,
courageous to
a Covid,
face
né,
COVID
e tomou todos
risks,
os cuidados
and
para
we
evitar a
took
transmissão
all
da
measures to
contaminação do
avoid
coronavírus. Também queria
contagion
deixar aqui
and
um
transmission
agradecimento ao
of
comitê
this
técnico
coronavirus.
da PES,
I also would like to
todos os anos nos
thank the
apoiam,
technical
e
committee
também a
that
Brapa
support
Territorial
to
por
us
ter dividido
with
conosco a
in
sua
PASS,
experiência
and also I'd like to thank Embrapa Territorial for sharing their experience with us so that we were able to
identificar as áreas de
identify
preservação
the
ambiental
conservation
nas propriedades rurais.
areas
E, por fim,
within
agradecer mais uma
farms.
vez e por
Also,
mais ano
once again, I'd
a
like to
parceria
thank
com todos
the
os
partnership
citricultores
with all
que
citrus
têm
growers
sido, de muita confiança com o nosso trabalho e
with
permitido
high
que o
reliability
levantamento
in our work.
acontecesse em pleno
And
sul federal.
thank you, citrus growers, for allowing us to enter your
Obrigada,
farms
Vinícius.
to
Considerações
carry
do
out our
professor
work.
Barbosa agora.
Thank you, Vinicius. Now, Professor Barbosa, your final words.
Inicialmente,
I'd like to
parabenizar o
first
Fundecitrus pela
congratulate Fundecitrus for
realização de mais essa estimativa de safra,
one more crop
mesmo em
estimate
situações
survey,
bastante adversas
even
devido
under
à pandemia
adverse
de
conditions due
coronavírus,
to this pandemic
e
we're facing.
principalmente em relação
And
à equipe do Vinícius, que
I'd like to congratulate
enfrentou os
Vinicius'
trabalhos de
team
campo e
that went
coordenou com
out in the field under the coordination
capacidade aí toda a
by
participação, né,
Vinicius.
coleta das
He was
informações.
very successful in working in the field to collect all the information needed. And I'd like to emphasize that even with all the adverse situation, we were able to carry out work with a lot of reliability and with all the rigor we have always had in this crop estimate. Every new estimate is a challenge because we have a series of problems to solve along the way. So my impression is that sometimes it's just like, let's repeat what we did before last year. But no, every year we have different things coming up. This year was totally atypical, and we had to take a lot of measures to come to the results of our work despite difficulties. So Thank you and
Muito obrigada
congratulations,
a
Vinicius,
todos pela
on your
presença.
team.
Muito
Thank you very
obrigada
much for
também
being
pela
here.
companhia de vocês
Thank
na
you,
nossa audiência
those
bastante
watching
elevada,
us
com muitos
live.
comentários aí pela
Thank you
internet.
for comments being posted online as well. And we are here at your service for answering other questions that may be left, may have been left unanswered. Now we are going to end our broadcast, but before I'd like to make special thanks. Would like to thank the citrus growers that every year open their gates to their farms to welcome past survey agents. The survey is only possible thanks to your support. So here is our sincere appreciation. We thank also the orange juice companies, namely Citrosuco, Cutrale, Louis Dreyfus, for once again having allowed their groves to be part of the survey sample and for supplying information on the average size of oranges received throughout the crop for industrial processing. We thank the São Paulo State Department of Agriculture and Supply for providing information relative to the number of citrus nursery plants traded with the required plant transit permit in the state of São Paulo in 2019. We thank the Embrapa Territorial for sharing their experience and for the methodological guidance to support the mensuration of areas dedicated to environmental conservation areas on citrus farms. That is worth mentioning because for every 2.5 hectares, we have 1 hectare of conserved area. We thank from the Citrus Board, members of the Technical Committee, and survey agents for their dedication and commitment that allowed deadlines to be met while still maintaining the high standard of quality and reliability of the survey, particularly this year with all restrictions imposed by the pandemic, COVID-19. Finally, I would like to remind you that the summary of the crop forecast survey will be published still today on the Fundecitrus website, and the complete report will be made available soon. On behalf of the Fund for Citrus Protection, Fundecitrus, I thank all of you that watched our broadcast live online in more than 20 countries, among them the United States, France, Germany. Thank you so much for watching us. Citriculture is so important to Brazil and to the world as a whole. So, thank you, have a great day and an excellent week. See you next year.